Hello and welcome to my somewhat review, somewhat comparison of Dark Souls to its two immediate sequels. We'll be discussing how it stacks up all these years later, as well as its evolution from Demon Souls. I won't, however, be talking about Bloodborne, simply because it doesn't have the Souls name and therefore isn't in the Dark Souls series, but I will bring up how the first half of Dark Souls is the best thing ever. Alright, let's go. The Dark Souls was released on September 22nd, 2011. In the 5 years since the game came out and I made this video, it's had two direct sequels and one spiritual sequel. Now, Dark Souls actually did so much right that it does deserve a majority of the praise that it got. As said before, it came out in 2011, a year that did have some absolute standout titles like Portal 2 and Rayman Origins and Minecraft, but there was also a lot of generic, mediocre bullshit, and most of it went for the dark, gritty action angle. 2011 gave us such forgettable AAA shovelware as Dead Island, Bulletstorm, Brink, Rage, Modern Warfare 3, Gears of War 3 probably, I never played that one. But then there was the one, the only in my bay, Dark Souls. Poor little old Dark Souls, off on its own, being outmarketed and completely overshadowed by the looming release of Skyrim just a month and a half later. The little game that could had a lot going against it right out of the gate. Biggest of all was that it was just so unfamiliar to so many gamers. Foreign, mysterious, and frankly a little uninviting, it seemed destined to be another curious niche of a game only for hardcore enthusiasts. You could see what made it so different than the tutorial-plagued and hand-holding nature of its competition. This game really was special. You start the game off in Northern Ireland, and within seconds you're actually playing the game. You can walk around, hit stuff with your dinky stick, look at Easter eggs. You can actually do stuff. By the time you're done riding that stupid-ass donkey cart in Skyrim for the billionth time, you could be done the tutorial area, killed the first boss, and on your way to going the wrong direction and dying in the graveyard. Like a true Dark Souls player. The magic that hooked me to the game pretty much started in the Firelink Shrine. I began to realize the level of choice and variety the game was offering from the first area alone. The fact that you could keep items after you died meant that you could go on exploration-based suicide runs with little to no negative impact on the game. You could go down to New Londo, you could go down to the catacombs, you could actually go the right way, and it made for an amazing sense of a controlled sandbox. Kind of like a 3D Metroidvania game, and in a lot of ways, Dark Souls is everything Castlevania should have become when it transitioned to 3D, instead of another DMC clone. But unlike the route Castlevania took, the Dark Souls sequels are actually really good in their own right. But they have problems stacking up to the original, or at least evolving past it like they should have. For every step forward they take, it feels like they take 1.5 back. Not quite 2 steps back, but close. With that said, here are 3 major reasons the sequels don't quite live up to the potential legacy of the great Dark Souls. Number 1, the sequels killed the magic. Not in a direct way, but the sequels managed to normalize the lore. Dark Souls hit a perfect sweet spot with its story and world building. It gave you just enough where you could piece the story together, or, watch a YouTube video on it, but it didn't give you so much that you knew every event in a detailed timeline like so many people want. There aren't history books on this stuff, but that doesn't mean it isn't fleshed out. It's just that the stories and the settings and the characters aren't shoved down your throat. However, as the sequels began to pour in, a lot of those vague, interesting concepts began to quickly get overused. A phrase like linking the fire once dripped with mystique, but now it sounds as common as like save the princess. Chosen Undead, Curse of the Undead, dudes named Patches, all of it got played out so quickly. In contrast, Demon Souls still hosts plenty of intrigue. The world of Boletaria has so many unanswered questions that cause you to actually think about them. What is the Nexus and where is it? Is it flying? How does the mist work? What is the old one and what is that place he slumbers in? There's a lot of questions to be had there. Something like the Abyss also once had that mystery. What is the Abyss? What is it, a world underneath our world? Why does water seem to stop the spread of it? And while we don't exactly get answers to these questions, we see more than enough of the Abyss in the next 2 games in the DLC to really not care. Everything bad seems to be from it, and all unanswered questions seem to relate to it. It's the nanobots of the Souls series, and after the first game, it really just wasn't that interesting anymore. Number 2, poor NPC variety. Now, in its defense, Dark Souls set the bar pretty high here. Mostly in its first half, of course, where the series was at its no doubtably highest point. but the NPCs you meet and their stories are some of the absolute best in video games. The fact that you had to keep talking to them just to learn more about them actually threw me for a loop the first time I played. This is another example of something that just seemed incredibly unique in the first game, but then they just butchered as the series went on. In the first game, the NPCs would have complete sentences or thoughts before you could talk to them again. It was like having an introductory conversation with them and then trying to get to know them better with the second conversation, peeling away those layers.
I want you to know that it is not meant in ill will.
In Dark Souls 2, the characters just speak in weird, incomplete sentences, forcing you to keep talking to them, just to keep talking to them. It's like they saw how they did it in the first game and saw how cool that seemed, and then just did it wrong. But honestly, that's the least of the problems. Most people playing this game were probably used to the Bethesda or other sandbox games versions of NPCs, which usually consist of characters who only serve one purpose, possibly for a quest, and then they become background decoration. This first Dark Souls game gave its NPCs life. They moved around somewhat independent of you, setting up shop in other locations and going on personal journeys for various reasons. They were like their own little people with their own stories who just happened to coincide with you on your journey. Someone else once called meeting the NPCs akin to two ships passing at sea, and I really like that way of putting it, as though the lonely journey is shared with another for just a few short minutes and then it's gone. The characters you meet are so interesting and varied, and while a lot of them are just reskins of characters from Demon's Souls, you feel that it can get away with it, as From Software obviously couldn't make the Demon's Souls sequel it wanted. It's just almost mind-boggling when they got away with it the first time that they would continue to reuse these characters' designs and archetypes in its sequels. Dark Souls 3 gave us some new characters, but still a lot of them were just reskins from Demon's Souls. Yuria is Mephistopheles, Cirrus is Selene, Anri is Ostrava, Grey Rat is Kinda Stockpile Thomas, Andre and Onion Bro are fucking from this game, virtually unchanged too, and just... Dark Souls 2 is kind of a write-off in this regard, since it wasn't made by the original creators, and sorta just feels like fanfiction, but what the hell, Dark Souls 3? Some of the NPC quests end in weird ways, but you got the impression that there were much greater plans for lots of them. Some of the cut quest lines can be viewed on YouTube, and you can assume even more were in creator Hidetaki Miyazaki's head. Miyazaki, upon the somewhat unexpected success of Dark Souls, was promoted to company president in 2014, and while you can assume he would still have deadlines under Bamco, you would also assume that he'd have a lot more freedom to at least mostly finish and flesh out his ideas. If you take Dark Souls and all of the cut content that looks almost finished on YouTube, it's a much bigger game and much more complete feeling than Dark Souls 3 ends up being. Number 3, the stuff everybody else complains about. So yeah, the bonfire placement kinda went to shit after this one. Everyone has said it, and it's totally true. It's amazing that they couldn't get it right ever again, since it felt so natural in this game. Honestly though, even Dark Souls started dropping the ball near the end. The bonfire placement in the first half is amazing, but by the time you're going after the Lord Souls, there's a bonfire nearly around every corner. Another annoying thing about the sequels is how super annoying it is to have to go back to Firelink's Shrine to level up. Kills the risk in the reward system that made the bonfire placement so genius to begin with. And then of course there's the nonsense disconnected world of Dark Souls 2 and the frustratingly linear world of Dark Souls 3, both of which just kinda make you miss the map layout of this game. And in a lot of ways, the PvP was never done better than its simplicity here, at least to some people. Even though a lot really did improve with the sequels, there were still weird setbacks like soul memory, which caused a lot of people to stick with the original, at least for a while. The story was never as good as in this one either. I already went into it earlier, but the sequels were just unnecessary rehashes, which is supposed to be the theme maybe, with the regeneration, rebirth or something like that, but I just don't really buy it. So yeah, in a lot of ways the sequels don't really live up to the potential of this game. Only minor improvements came along with each new installment. Useful stuff, but nothing groundbreaking. Never as big of a leap as it was going to Dark Souls from Demon's Souls. Mostly varied steps backwards to being more like Demon's Souls, which isn't really the way things are supposed to go. Dark Souls wasn't a perfect game, but at least in its first half, as said quite a few times already, it veered pretty close. The game absolutely nailed pacing, setting, atmosphere. The sequels could never really get all three of those going at the same time. Everything bad about Dark Souls at least feels justified because we had a boogeyman to blame, the big bad publisher with their evil release dates. But honestly, as consumers, we did luck out with this game. An absolute knockout single player with an absolute knockout seamless multiplayer component, packed in with an incredibly mysterious, cryptic story that caused whole communities to form around just trying to figure it the hell out. It's pretty cool when a game can have that kind of effect and mean that much to its audience that people are still talking about it 5 years later. Alright, I hope you enjoyed my short-ish comparison of Dark Souls to its sequels. Next video, we'll be chugging down the series line with Dark Souls 2, seeing how it stacked up to Demon in Dark when it first released, and talking about how it's honestly improved since then. So join me with that video. If you like this video, make sure to give it the old thumbs up and the old subscribe, and leave a comment about how I'm wrong, or about how other people have made similar videos, or about how you love my mildly bored sounding voice. This is my first real YouTube video, and it was quite the experience learning how to make something like this, since I virtually have no technology experience at all, and it was an uphill battle. But now I know how to do it, so more videos coming soon. Subscribe, and you can be in like the first 10 or 15 people that do it. Be pretty cool. We could like talk on Twitter and stuff. Alright, bye.